following episode describes gruesome details of an unsolved homicide. Listener discretion is advised. It's 2:15 in the afternoon on Wednesday, June 5th, 2019. Temperatures have peaked, reaching nearly 80 degrees on an overcast day in Worcester. Tow truck driver Jay Sr. is on his way back to Early's on Park Avenue with a blue Chevy Express van in tow. The van had been reported abandoned in the Advanced Auto Parts Shop parking lot about a quarter-mile down the street from Early's. When Sr. got back to the tow yard, he noticed swarms of flies escaping the Chevy van. As he got closer, he was overwhelmed by a foul smell. Police were called to the scene, and the van was towed to a back parking lot away from the public's view. A WPD detective climbed inside the van and found a plastic storage container under boxes of clothes, bags of trash, and other junk. The detective lifted the container's lid to find the body of 56-year-old John Sousa crammed inside. John had been missing for more than a month.
Unsolved Worcester is brought to you by the following sponsors. Follow the crowd through the doors of Donut Homies and say hi to Haley Noel, the donut queen of Worcester's Canal District. Donut Homies is open inside the Worcester Public Market at 160 Green Street every Wednesday through Sunday at 11 a.m. Online ordering with delivery and pickup options is available at donuthomies.com. Follow Donut Homies on Facebook and Instagram for monthly menu drops, specials, and more. Donut Homies, everything sweeter with the homies.
Welcome back to Unsolved Worcester. I'm your host, Dan Yeager. In today's episode, we look at the most recent unsolved homicide case on file with the Worcester Police Department. The 2019 murder of 56-year-old John Sousa. According to the Worcester PD, John died from blunt force trauma to his head. John's body was discovered stuffed in a storage bin inside an abandoned work van on Park Avenue in Worcester in early June 2019. John was from Hudson. He'd been missing for about 6 weeks. The van John was found in was reported missing to police in early May 2019. Unsolved Worcester takes a deep dive every Tuesday into the unsolved murders and missing persons cases under investigation by the Worcester Police Department's Detective Unit. Our goal is to remind residents of the Worcester area, both past and present, that there are dozens of unsolved homicides and missing persons cases that need resolution. We hope we can be the spark needed to solve a case. Be sure to visit Unsolved Worcester on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and listen to all episodes for free at unsolvedworcester.com and on your favorite podcast streaming platforms. Check out the video for this episode with exclusive aerial views and more on our Unsolved Worcester YouTube page. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. The circumstances surrounding the murder of John Sousa are suspicious at best. At worst, it's a storyline for developing conspiracy theories. The baseline of this unsolved case is simple. What kind of man was John Sousa, and how did he end up in that van? The answers to those questions might be the most unfortunate chapter of this mystery. John Sousa lived in Hudson. He was a handyman and construction worker. But the greatest work he did was help launch a fundraiser in 2000 for his nephew, Andrew Swenson. who at the time was diagnosed with leukemia. John helped organize a bone marrow screening and hosted motorcycle rides to raise money towards his nephew's medical expenses. Andrew died in 2002 at the age of 7, but John's fundraising efforts helped create the nonprofit organization Andrew's Helpful Hands, which helps families with children with cancer going through bone marrow transplants make their mortgage and rent payments. The charity is still active and going strong more than 20 years later. Sadly enough, that brings us back to the blue Chevy Express van that John's body was found in. According to multiple reports, the van was used by the charity to help with events and transporting equipment. The van was owned by a couple in Marlborough who let John Sousa borrow it roughly 6 weeks before he was found dead inside of it. The couple had reported the van missing to Marlborough police on May 7th. On June 5th, police found John's body in a plastic container inside the missing van. The blue Chevy van had been in the parking lot of the Advanced Auto Parts shop at 645 Park Avenue for about 2 weeks before the owners called Early's to report it abandoned and have it towed away. The van was parked in the back of that lot beyond the last row of parking spaces and away from the entrance to the store. Early's tow truck driver Jay Sr. found the van alongside an overgrown lot. Sr. was driving a self-loading wrecker, meaning he didn't have to get out of the truck to tow the van away. Sr. took a right out of the lot on Park Avenue and traveled the half mile to Early's at 536 Park Avenue. In all, the trip took about 2 minutes. When Sr. got back to Early's, he hopped out of his tow truck and immediately saw hundreds of flies escaping the van through a small vent. The smell coming from the van was so brutal, he went and got Early's owner to come and take a look. He decided to immediately call Worcester police. The 2-minute tow was likely long enough to jostle the hundreds of flies on top of and inside of the boxes and bags of trash in the van. The Early's crew thought maybe there was a dead animal inside. They never expected the unthinkable. Photos of the van shared with Unsolved Worcester show items in the back of the work van that looked like someone had cleaned out a cellar or an old home of unwanted items. There was a desk chair, piles of clothes, the top of a garbage bin, glassware wrapped in newspaper, tools, a desk lamp, trash bins, and more. According to a Facebook post from Early's, there were also 2 gas cans in the back of the van. A sheet partition separated the back of the van from the 2 seats in front. The only windows in the van were in the front, and a pair of windows on the side and back doors that all appeared to be blacked out. Buried under the clutter was a large plastic storage bin with wheels, probably a 50-gallon bin. And as police would later find out, inside was the body of 56-year-old John Sousa. About 5 minutes after the Chevy van was towed to Early's on Park Avenue, police arrived at the scene to inspect the van and find out where the rancid smell was coming from. Officers smashed out a window on the van's side door to let the flies and stink escape. The stench led them immediately to the plastic storage bin. On top of the bin, the name Rosie was written with marker. An officer lifted the cover of the bin to find John Sousa's body stuffed inside. Officers quickly called the WPD Detective Bureau to the scene for a suspicious death. Police set up a tent above the van and marked the area off with crime scene tape. The medical examiner arrived on scene later and took John's body away to perform an autopsy. The van was towed away just after 10 p.m., about 7.5 hours after the police were called to Early's. Worcester police have listed the cause of death as blunt force trauma. There are several questions that remain unanswered, with the obvious being who killed John Sousa and why. If he had been missing for 6 weeks, how long had John been in the van? And where was the van for the 4 weeks before it ended up in the Advanced Auto Parts parking lot? The reporting on John's murder has all but stopped, somewhat abruptly. News hasn't picked it up since the summer of 2019, and we're no closer to finding out these lingering questions. 4 years later, and John Sousa's murder remains unsolved. Thank you for listening. I'm Dan Yeager. Don't miss another episode. Click the notification button to get alerts when the new episodes of Unsolved Worcester drop. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, please consider clicking the like button for us, and if you subscribe, the next episodes will show up in your feed. Click the bell on the right and select all, and you'll get a notification of when the next episode is ready. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share, please leave them in the comments below. We do read them all and respond to as many as we can. Anyone with information about what happened to John Sousa are asked to contact the Worcester Police Detective Bureau at 508-799-8651 or send an anonymous text to 274-637. Write TIPWPD plus your message or send an anonymous web-based message at worcesterma.gov/police. Come back next week as Unsolved Worcester Season 5 continues with Episode 3, The Unsolved Murder of Richard Gregowski in June 1992. Richard was bludgeoned to death. His body was discovered by a younger boy near a gas station at the corner of Main Street and LaGrange Street. Special thanks to the Worcester Public Library, the Worcester Police Department, the City of Worcester, and our sponsors for making this possible. Information on the murder of John Sousa was gathered from multiple resources, reports from the Telegram and Gazette, Mass Live, Boston 25 News, and more. The Unsolved Worcester podcast music is provided by Tom Lebelzik of the Worcester Jazz Collective. This episode is written and produced by Pat Sargent. Drone footage provided by Ron Scott at New England Sky Pics. Videography and editing by Colin Turner. Sponsorship information announcer Chandler Walsh. This program is supported in part by a grant from the Worcester Arts Council and the National Endowment for the Arts. To find out more about how National Endowment for the Arts grants impact individuals and communities, visit www.arts.gov.